The proposed General Intelligence Laws Amendment Bill signals that reforms are underway for South Africa's intelligence sector. What have been the major issues within the sector since its transition away from Apartheid-era intelligence apparatus in 1994? And what are the upsides and the downsides of these amendments? Prof of Digital Society, Jane Duncan, is with the University of Glasgow and joins us now. Prof Duncan, good evening to you and welcome. You have special insights when it comes to this topic, as you've served on the 2018 high-level review panel for state security. And you've had a lot of observations that were made around the Zuma years impacting how institutions like the SSA functions, especially in terms of the merger of its domestic and foreign branches during his tenure. Share some of that insight with us, please.
Yes, sure. Good evening, Iman, and to your viewers. Well, what we saw during the Jacob Zuma years was the repurposing of civilian intelligence, a state security agency, for political ends in order to maintain in power a faction of the ruling ANC that had clustered around the former president. And the agency was repurposed in such a way where foreign and domestic branches that prior to 2009 had been separate with their own separate directors general were amalgamated in a highly irregular fashion following the 2009 national election with a single director general, which then enabled the repurposing of the agency for abuse. In fact, this is what part of what we refer to as the architecture of abuse.
So it's one of the recommendations then of this bill to merge and rename those two branches, the South African Intelligence Service and the South African Intelligence Agency. Why is that important?
Yes, Iman, in fact, it's the opposite. What this bill is attempting to do is to disestablish the State Security Agency as it currently stands and to establish a South African Intelligence Service, which is the domestic branch of the agency, and a South African Intelligence Service, which would be the foreign branch with their own separate directors general. So in other words, the amalgamated state security agency, as we have at the moment, will cease to exist, and we will have two separate agencies with their own separate directors general. And this deconcentrates power. It makes it more difficult to have the kind of scenario that we had in the past, where if a director general came into the position that had malifieds or ill intent or intelligence in the country, then all they had to do was to use that position in order to influence the direction of both foreign and domestic intelligence. And that is the important part of this particular bill, and a positive development, that that concentration of power that we saw in one director general is actually being addressed finally. It's rather belated. I mean, we had made this recommendation to disestablish the SSA and to revert back to the pre-2009 configuration of having separate foreign and domestic branches as far back as 2018, but better late than never.
So I did actually mean to say separate and not merge into those two agencies which had been centralized, as you say, under the Zuma years. So what are some of the problems? You know, you've observed that in your writing that some of the proposals in this bill risk replacing old abuses with new ones. So maybe just quickly run us through where some of those concerns lie.
Yes, well, I wrote an op-ed recently which focused on some of the strengths and weaknesses of the bill. It's a very extensive bill, I must just say, so it's very difficult to comment on comprehensively because it actually amends 12 laws, including South Africa's main intelligence laws. But I think one of the problems with the bill is that it has definitions and mandates for the domestic and foreign branches, respectively, that are so incredibly broad that they lend themselves to abuse. So on the one hand, we're dealing with the legacy of abuse from the Zuma years. On the other hand, we're creating even more potential for abuse through these overbroad mandates. So if we look at the definition of national security, for instance, and I've got it here, it's defined as the capabilities, measures, and activities of the state to pursue or advance any threat, any potential threat, any opportunity or potential opportunity, or the security of the public or its people. And domestic intelligence, foreign intelligence, intelligence gathering, national security intelligence, and threats to national security are all defined in a similarly broad fashion, where they focus both on threats and opportunities. Now, the difficulty with that is, for one thing, it blurs the lines between what intelligence agencies should be doing and what other organs of the state should be doing, and it increases the potential for different organs of state to trample on one another's toes. But in addition to that, intelligence is really the most, especially national security intelligence, is the most secretive arm of the state, and we want to use it only in the most extreme and extraordinary circumstances where we are protecting the country from imminent threats. But if we're also using intelligence in order to advance opportunities, including opportunities that impact on national security in the country, then we are potentially broadening the focus of intelligence far beyond what it should actually be dealing with.
Well, we'll see how it all lands because Parliament would complete its work presumably by the 1st of March. And then we'll see what, where it lands ostensibly. What you're talking about there in terms of that overlap also raises questions around intelligence overreach. And hopefully we can have a future discussion on some of those themes as well as we wait to see what happens. Professor Jane Duncan, thank you very much for talking to us tonight. We appreciate your time. I know that you were, it's a difficult subject to talk about in a space of a few minutes, but at least it's in the public consciousness and people can go and read the developments in the amendment bill and also see where some of these issues that you raised are coming from. Professor Jane Duncan is with the University of Glasgow.